Okay, well, thank you very much. Through the chair, on behalf of the Community and Economic Development Commission, certainly a pleasure to come and provide to you our mid-year report because of some of the delays. Some of the information here is a bit dated. I have updated the presentation, a few of the slides with some new information, and so we will make sure that is circulated following the meeting. And just before I begin, would just like to recognize that in putting together a lot of the data, certainly represents additional work on the part of staff. I wanted to thank my staff, and in particular Trevor Crow, who has helped put together this fairly extensive presentation for you today. So we'll speak a little bit to what our chair, Councillor Roberts, was going to introduce. Really, when we look at Prince Edward County in 2017, we're looking at a degree of prosperity. We're certainly seeing an uptick in the economy in a number of areas. Certainly tourism is at the foundation of a lot of that, but certainly through our data collection and what we're seeing in other sectors, it doesn't end with tourism. And tourism is no longer only generating economic activity that produces seasonal jobs or low-paying jobs. Certainly our feedback from developers, from contractors, from manufacturing and from other sectors showing that we're seeing growth really across the board in a lot of different areas. That being said, it means that we're also seeing a lot of challenges that are created by that growth. First and foremost is workforce. Really our current workforce can't keep up with the demand, and that issue is exacerbated by the lack of housing supply as well, also being caused by that demand for people to come and move here. So as I've said many times, it's a problem, but in terms of, on the scale of problems, it is a good problem because it means that there are other good things happening, but we do have to address that issue. Certainly this year there's been a real re-emphasis on youth by the Commission, by this Council with its 2017 budget, and also with other stakeholders in the community like the ROC and others who have committed to youth programs, entrepreneurship, the Youth Centre, and other initiatives. And at least on the part of the Commission and the Department, really we've re-emphasized data collection and implementation of a lot of strategies that have been building over time. We're looking at establishing baselines moving forward. You're going to see a lot of that, the start of that baseline data in this presentation. And once we have that, we'll be able to set targets for 2018 and beyond. But all that being said, when we go and we speak to business leaders, when we speak to the development community, when we speak to small business, when we speak to the tourism sector, there's definitely a sense of urgency with dealing with the problems that we are having with these challenges, because there is no sign of these challenges slowing down. So it's not something that we can wait in order to address. It is going to require urgent action, and staff will be coming forward in the coming months with reports and recommendations on how to start to address those issues. So that's really the picture of the county right now. In terms of the Commission's priorities, this year visitor services rollout, because we had a transition from the Chamber to the Commission in that delivery. Affordable housing, rentals and availability, we started to delve into that issue. Workforce attraction and development, there have been initiatives there. And then to a lesser degree, but more initiatives are happening now, the areas of agricultural partnerships, heritage preservation, and ongoing outreach and communication to make the public more aware of what the Commission and the Department are doing for the community. So the detail here is not what's important, more so just explaining where we're at in reporting this to you. The top portion is we identify our issues and challenges, and this middle portion, which you're about to see, is the metrics or the indicators associated with those initiatives. So we're reporting to you on our direct activities and how those activities panned out over the course of 2017, showing you some comparisons to 2016 and previous years when we had those numbers, and these will help us establish the baselines moving forward. The other thing I wanted to point out is since 2013, when we developed the Community Development Strategic Plan, there's been a lot of different plans. There's been different strategies, there's been different initiatives that have been undertaken, and as you can see that we're now about halfway through 2017, we're right in the middle of now implementing a lot of these things. So essentially we're at the point where the rubber has hit the road. Many things have been implemented and some are about to be implemented. And 4 of our most recent activities are at the bottom of that list: the development framework, visitor services that rolled out this year, wayfinding signage, which is underway now, and our accommodation study, which is underway now. So those will be implemented in short order as well. To start with visitor services, this was probably the most ambitious undertaking of the Commission this year. A lot of these initiatives were pilot projects. They haven't been really done in the way we are doing them anywhere else, and so there has been some trial and error. But they are comprehensive and they were addressing a lot of the gaps. So wayfinding signage, those guidelines will be coming before Council before the end of the year. We have 13 businesses participating in our distribution program, getting materials around the county collectively in order to save money. The brand new tourism website, which is visitpec.ca, launched in early July and is proving very successful. We are ramping that up, signing more and more businesses onto it, and it's the first time the county has had its own tourism or visitor web portal. So I really encourage you to check that out at www.visitpec.ca. We have a certified tourism ambassador training program. 22 people have been trained already at our visitor hotspots. We developed that in collaboration with Loyalist. And we established 8 hotspot or visitor centers around the county in partnership with the libraries, the museums, and a number of private businesses. And that was really because we realized that one central visitor center didn't make sense in a large county with many entry points. So we are learning as we're going through these, but so far so good on all fronts. I'd be happy to answer questions about any of those specific initiatives at the end. And the one thing I wanted to point out about the hotspots is this new approach, which is visitor tracking or data collection. And we're utilizing something really unique. It's a software called Hilo, and there's these little boxes that you see here at each of our visitor centers around the county, each of the 8. Plus we have one that we're able to take to special events to pick up visitor information from there. Essentially what it allows us to do is see where people are coming from that come within close proximity of these boxes. They run on a Wi-Fi signal, and the really cool part about it is it allows us to correlate the people that we pick up here in the county with those same people who have visited our websites or visited our social media accounts. So we can directly see that link between they were looking on certain pages, they were using our visitor website, and then 2 or 3 months later we picked up the same signal in Prince Edward County at certain visitor hotspots. So it's great data to help us again establish baselines. Right now we're only picking up 1 to 2%, so it means we have a lot of room for growth. And it also gives us a lot of great data to provide to the tourism sector, especially those people that are working with us as hotspots, so they get a sense of where people are coming from that are coming to their establishments. So it's just a new, excellent data tool. Since we started using this, actually, the Great Waterway, the RTO 9 in this region, picked up on this, and they are running it as a pilot project throughout the RTO. So between ourselves, Bay of Quinte, and others in the region, we'll all be looking at how effective this tool is in the next year or two. Next, the Commission invested $15,000 into our lead or our primary print publication. 140,000 of these are circulated through Food and Drink Magazine in the GTA, but also into Ottawa and into Montreal via Post Media. We also take some to different events and distribute them to visitor centers outside of the county as well. The whole idea is that is a lure piece. It's not detailed, it's not for wayfinding, it goes to the outside to attract people to come in. And the great thing about this project is that $15,000 that the Commission has invested leverages $21 additional $1,000 from partners and advertisers that participate in that product. This isn't directly funded by the Commission. It's funded through the department budget, but it is just another example of where we're leveraging local resources and partnering with our businesses. Our investment is $2,800 and some in-kind support in facilitating this. And this is a partnership between Picton, Bloomfield, Wellington, Consicon, those business associations. It's business listings, wayfinding, information about the communities, and we print 20,000 of those, and they're circulated in the immediate area and locally. That investment leverages an additional $17,200 from those partner associations. Earned media in 2017, this is something that we have tracked, but we haven't really reported on this. In your presentation, you probably see a much earlier number from May. As of August, we're now at just under $1 million of earned media through 277 different headlines. That doesn't include a story about what happened at council one night in local newspapers. That includes, that really covers all of our earned media in outside publications, stories about the county, blogs, those types of things. And in order for us to leverage that, really all we invest is a small amount of money and staff time in facilitating FAM tours and staying in touch with our partners at OTMPC and Ontario Tourism, who increasingly funnel a lot of these Tier 1 media publications and these media opportunities our direction. So it's been a really good bang for the buck in terms of the advertising value that we're getting from a relatively small dollar investment. And I believe this year our budget for FAM tours and facilitating these is only $5,000. Next, I want to touch on Build a New Life. All of you know about our lead generation website. This has been active since I think the spring or summer 2016, and these were the last numbers that were reported then. I think this would have been in May or June. I want to show you how we're doing to date. So in 2017, an additional 300,000 impressions through social media. Whenever marketing agencies are talking about the effectiveness of their digital marketing, a lot of them stop with, this is how many impressions we get. And we like to go a lot further because the impression doesn't necessarily mean you've generated any activity. So from those 300,000 additional impressions, we're up to 130,000 visits to Build a New Life. So this is taking us through the sales funnel. We're now up to 3,300 subscribers to our newsletter and other media that goes out through various different streams, which means we're in constant communication with these people. And through that process, we're able to score their level of interest or involvement, how many of them open the newsletters, how many pages or new blogs they're reading on our sites. And through there, we identify the top leads. In total, we've had 99 legitimate new business inquiries that have come through the site, representing about $68 million in potential investment. And when we gave this presentation to the Commission, the question was, how many of those businesses have actually started up? And there's always a bit of a gestation period between inquiry and when the rubber hits the road, but since it has been online since 2016, I will give you a sense. This is an idea of some of the intakes that we have through the site. And to date, we have 6 completely new or relocated businesses that specifically came through the lead generation with Build a New Life. 20 businesses were acquired or are in the process of expanding as a result of through this contact, and we have 5 that are in the process of opening that we're actively working with. So we do have some direct connection from there being a lead that was brought through this system and now is resulting in real jobs and new businesses. I won't read the quote, you have it in your package, but this is just one example of one of those businesses, really start to finish through Build a New Life, and they provide a really good endorsement of how great it was for someone who was considering a move here to start a business, to have that as a resource and as an inspiration, and then to know how to follow up when they actually wanted to do something here. Next, just want to take you through some of the youth initiatives, in particular through the ROC, because the Commission and Council have both provided funding to the ROC, and the Commission is actively working through staff on helping them facilitate their youth entrepreneurship programs and have supported them with letters of support through different grant applications this year. The ROC this year, 91 youth involved in entrepreneur programs, 809 participation opportunities with businesses. They were matching youth with businesses in the community, a bit of a mentorship project. 108 in-kind hours, 8 youth ambassadors as part of the C3 project when the ship came through as part of Canada 150. And at the brand new youth center, 5 youth are employed there as resources on a part-time basis. 1,100 youth visits, and I think all of these numbers were as of May or June, so I'm sure they've increased now, especially over the summer. 174 individual youth, which is excellent, and there are upcoming 12 seats on a new PEC Youth Advisory Group that's being formed through our federal MP, Neil Ellis, that the ROC is participating in, and we will also be participating in through the Commission. And as you know, Council approved amending the Commission's terms of reference, so for this coming fall, we will have that non-voting youth representative also engaging with the county through the commission. Before I get into the job fair, any questions on anything presented so far?
Thanks, Neil. I just have a question about the visitor data collection, the ILO boxes.
Sure.
In terms of privacy, like you're basically scraping data from people that walk into these locations. Are there implications related to that in terms of identifying people that have that name?
Yeah, through the chair, short answer is no. There isn't. That was a big concern of ours before we did this, and the Great Waterway has looked into that too, otherwise they wouldn't have ruled this out. There's no identifiable information. In fact, the only way that we can tell even where those signals have come from is if they connect to one of our websites or social media platforms prior to being picked up in the county, because then there's actually a signal that's detected in terms of where they're connecting from, a geographic location. So there's no identifiable information. We can tell how many people are coming through, so just how many mobile devices, and we can make that correlation of where they're from. But if we haven't connected with them, and this is where there's room for growth or improvement of this program, if we haven't connected with them prior to the visit, we don't know where they're from. So it's largely correlational, but it's completely legal. We're not scraping any private data.
Near the first of the presentation, under the story 2017, just establishing baselines to measure against in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Which baseline is measuring what? I just was curious. That's always
Sure. Sure. So, for example, on the next section, we'll show you some of the baseline data and actually the trend from when we started the job fair, for example. So, the job fair is one of those initiatives we have been collecting data on, but there's been other things that we haven't collected data on that now we are collecting data on over the course of 2017. So, for instance, we'll be able to see how many new business inquiries came through our workshop model, or we'll be able to see the effectiveness of the small business center and how they report on their consultations and how many new businesses are started as a result. And then we'll be able to set targets so that we can determine the effectiveness of our investment in those programs. The job fair is actually a very unique one because things have changed in the county's job market so dramatically since we started the job fair that the kind of targets we're going to set moving forward are not the type that you would think. It's not about trying to get more people into the job fair or try to get more employers, which is what our initial targets were internally for ourselves. Now it's more about, is a job fair even the right approach, given that we have such a labor shortage? Why have everybody come with all of their jobs to a single location if nobody really needs jobs in the county and we need to bring people in from the outside? So it's about tracking everything this year, looking at those things that we've tracked in the past, and then determining what kind of targets we set in each of those areas. And then we'll be able to report to you. So some things we have baseline data for already, and you'll see that in a second, and other things we've never collected that data in that way. And that's the intention this year.
As a quick follow-up, so in your baseline, this is something I've always looked for, is knowing what we have now. So are you in any way working on trying to determine what businesses, what kind of businesses, and how many, and where they're located, so that when we know if we have
Through the chair, there actually is a slide on that in this presentation that wasn't included in yours because that question was asked by the commission as well. Geography, exactly where they are is a little bit harder to determine, but we do know the types of businesses, number of employees, and the trends in those different classifications of business. And I have some data on that you'll see in a moment. I think one more.
As we attract these tourists, it's wonderful, but the one concern, and I just happened to observe it last Saturday, some people who are tourists feel that the people of the county are all hard up and they can come in and do whatever they want, park wherever they want, and it's, do we do anything towards promoting the fact we want you, first of all? But secondly, we have laws the same as any other place in the province, and you have to adhere to it. Because some of the business people are a little bit, and don't get me wrong, it's not everybody that comes in,
Of course, yeah.
but certainly some of them that have said there seems to be a feeling that that's the only thing we got to live for as tourists, so we can do anything we want, including parking in the center of the streets. Shut her down.
Through the chair, I mean, I'm not going to have all the answers to addressing some of those problems, on the spot right now, but I think those, are challenges alongside the workforce challenges and the housing challenges that the recent economic, uptick, especially with tourism, have caused. And as you know, in the media very recently, we're also experiencing challenges with the quality or the perception of quality challenges at some of our accommodations as well, and that doesn't reflect well on the county, and certainly isn't representative of all of our accommodators. So I think that things have just changed so quickly in such a short period of time that this year especially we're starting to shift to what we're focusing on. A lot more of our efforts are going to be on workforce attraction and development, dealing with the housing issues that we have, looking at things like vacation rentals and the accommodation market. The Chamber has also identified that as a challenge. And we're going to need to look more closely at how we're managing things like parking and issues at the park and things like that. All of those things will be higher up on our radar, I think, moving forward. So, another one? Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's a good question. Just go back to the job fair there for a second. So are you able to tell the people that come to the job fair, are they from the county, or are you able to tell where they are coming from? And what's the unemployment rate in the county? So I think you mentioned there's a job fair, you either have it here or where. So what's the unemployment rate in the county?
Through the chair, I don't have the unemployment rate right in front of me. Maybe I should know it off the top of my head. I know that it's very low. Our unemployment rate is below the provincial average. And your other question about where people are coming from for the job fair, yes, we track postal codes as people are coming in. So we do get a sense of where they're coming from. The majority are still from Prince Edward County, but we do get some from Napanee, Belleville, North Hastings. Some actually, a few have come from relatively far away, a few hours, looking for work potentially. But the majority are still local or the immediate region. And maybe that's a good segue into, did you have a follow-up?
Would you be able to provide the unemployment rate?
Your microphone is.
Would you be able to get the unemployment rate for us?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it should be fairly easy. So, like I said, good segue to the job fair. In 2017, we had 70, might have had 71, 72 employers participate. So this was the most ever, which gives us a sense of the awareness of this as an opportunity to attract employees, but also the challenges that these employers are having, that they would want to participate in something like this. From those 70, we had 732 jobs that were available. And we had all of those jobs posted on the website. We had a little over 6,000 job seekers through our web portal. And the really interesting part was about 3,500 were before the actual job fair. And that was really the intent. People were to see what was going to be there so they could tailor their resumes accordingly and plan to meet with those people. But the really interesting part was that, oops, went the wrong way. The interesting part was that after the job fair, we still had another 3,200 people linking to the website, looking at those jobs. So that gave us the idea that there are still more people looking for work here. which didn't quite align with some of the other data that we have on the next slide. Some of these people may have been people who are considering coming to the county, who use the Build a New Life website for that reason. They visit here, they're thinking of coming, and because this information was there, they're looking at potential opportunities for them to work if they were to move to the county. So this is some of that data collection that I was talking about. This shows the number of attendees, the jobs, and the employers participating from 2014 to this year. And as you can see, since 2014 until this year, the attendees have gone down each year, despite very similar marketing efforts and a lot more jobs being available at each of the successive job fairs, and more employers as well. A little bit of a push this past year to try and get more high school students there. And as you can see, the attendance did get pushed up a little bit as a result. But I think the big takeaway from this is that the number of jobs from 2016 to 2017 skyrocketed, and far more than is explainable just by an increase in the number of employers that were there. So it certainly supports that notion that county businesses are looking to expand and are having challenges in finding a workforce. So some more data. The department runs workshops that are very much in alignment with the Commission's strategic priorities and councils as well. This is the data since the workshop series was started. We have had almost 1,000 individuals attend our workshops since 2013. 44 total workshops, and you can see the breakdown over each of the years. Generally, we're finding that with the resources we have, that we're able to run 9, 10, 11 workshops and get around 200 attendees in any given year. So things are going well there. And there's a result to us hosting these workshops. So we've gone through all the way back to 2013. There are 44 new business starts that were directly associated with the workshop. So that means someone who was attending our workshops started a business after attending our workshops. So there's, we like to draw some connection there. A lot of the people that attend our workshops tend to participate in successive workshops. So if they're getting ready to start a business, they'll attend one on using Excel, they'll attend one on accounting, they'll attend one on HR, they'll attend one on labeling or provincial reporting requirements or things like that. And a lot of those people are the people that started businesses as a result. 24 brand new businesses that then started to participate in our workshop model, 165 existing, 16 that were planning to sell their business, and so we're participating in our workshops because we have workshops for succession planning and related issues, and a number that were planning to close or to sell that participated in the workshops as well. So we're really seeing business owners and operators or prospective business operators taking advantage of this model across the board. And I won't read the quotes, but again, a couple quotes from some of the participants. This workshop model has been really successful for us. Was there another question?
Councilor Roberts has a question.
I was hoping it would be getting close to an answer, just responding to Councilor Lyman's request on unemployment figures. And Hastings and Prince Edward counties appear to have the lowest jobless rates in the province. They increased slightly from 4 to 4.5% last month. But overall, that 4.5% jobless rate in the local area was down significantly from over 7% in February of 2016.
Through the chair, no, I appreciate that, and again, I think that just supports what we're seeing on the ground, which is a workforce shortage across all industries.
And it used to be that 6% unemployment was considered full employment, so we're 4.5.
So moving on, the Commission funds the Small Business Center. That's a joint venture between the Ministry of Economic Development, and they've changed their acronym again, so I don't have it off the top of my head, but Prince Edward County, cities of Quinte West and Belleville. And we have an individual, Sandy Abbott, who's stationed out of the Edward building. I believe it's 2 to 3 days a week. And the commission provides $15,000 in funding to the Small Business Center in order to enable Sandy to be here. And Sandy works very closely with our staff. She helps us develop workshops. Actually, her and Grace in our office work very closely together on developing that workshop model. A lot of our referrals come through Sandy. She almost feels like a bit of an extension of the department, which is great. And as a result of this investment, 243 consultations through that Small Business Center office, 40 new business starts in the county supported, 17 expansions supported, and in addition to what you could say are 40 jobs created from those new 40 businesses, an additional 20 jobs associated with those businesses for those that did hire at least one additional employee, for a total of 60 jobs. Sandy has also been instrumental in securing 10 dedicated seats for the Youth Summer Company program, which is essentially a summer program where youth get to become entrepreneurs, develop a company, a product, a service, and there is some funding that's provided through the province as well. We were able to get 10 dedicated county positions for that program, which is great. Again, supporting youth, giving them different options, helping them see that there are means for them to stay in the community and work after school. And all this data is from April 2016 to April 2017, which is when they do their tracking. There's a little bit more information about jobs later on, so we will come back to that. But first, as you know, the Community Development Department is involved in all corporate grant applications, from infrastructure to initiative studies and programs. This is our year-to-date, $1.9 million in grants secured. The department, of course, files the applications and helps to administer them, working very closely with finance, with EDW, and with other departments that provide a lot of the detail for these programs. But just wanted to keep you updated on that. I mentioned it to the commission, but in terms of the benefit of identifying an individual to take the lead, the structure is the most important thing, and in my estimation has really panned out for the county in the success that we've had in applying for and receiving grants. I think that if you didn't have that continuity, if you didn't have those relationships being built with some of these grant officers and representatives of these agencies, you have the potential to maybe not get these funds awarded. So I think we've been a little bit ahead of the curve in recognizing that if we have a single point person, that we can apply for these more strategically. So I'm just going to go on to, that's the end of kind of our low-level initiatives, so the direct measurements of our different activities. And next I'm just going to move on to some of the broad indicators before the end. Any other questions before we do that?
I actually have a couple of questions here, Councilor Pennell and Councilor Gale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The one question I had was, of the 700 people that was required for the workforce, how many of those jobs have actually been fulfilled?
That's a great question. We were just looking at that yesterday, actually, in the office. I don't have the numbers handy, but I think that somewhere between 100 and 200 have been actually filled. A lot of those are part-time, although each year there was an increasing number of full-time jobs. I don't have that percentage handy either. And our staff are still, just to give you an idea of how we track that, staff right now are calling up every employer that participated and asking about hires as a result of the job fair. We can't really do that right away because a lot of times they don't make the hires till much later on, or they may go back to a resume that they've received. So we still have some of those numbers coming in. I don't think we've contacted all the employers yet.
Councilor Gale?
You know, of the grants secured in 2017, do we run the risk of losing out on any of these grants by not meeting the deadline? And I guess specifically one kind of talking about, maybe I don't want to talk about, is defensive park rehabilitation, because my understanding was that the private account was 15. I forget what the timeline was, but I guess I'd hate to see us lose out anything if we're lagging behind and not getting the project started and finished. So if you maybe count on that one specifically, but also are there any others that we could potentially lose out on because this the deadline we can't keep for a reason?
So through the chair, short answer is I don't think so. Although I think staff would certainly acknowledge that the volume of work that we have this year through development proposals, but also our own somewhat ambitious capital project plan, means that staff is swamped with these projects, and so some things may be happening a little bit later than we would like. I know for the Benson Park project in particular, we just met last week, have a fairly clear plan on tendering the different components of that, and are confident that we'll be able to move ahead.
Just to follow up that, is there a deadline that has to be completed
That program has to be completed by year's end, I believe.
by this year?
It's either by year's end or it's by March 31st, but essentially it's year's end because that'll be the end of the construction season for us. So
Did one of the components of that project not include public washrooms?
yes, that's true.
So we're going to public washroom before the end of the year.
That is the plan.
I'm
Yeah,
not talking porta potties.
that's the plan. Yes.
But
Yeah.
Councilor Ferguson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for all this data, Neil. This is a great presentation, but I've got a question about the jobs that are being filled. Do you have any data about what types they are? You answered the question about full-time, part-time, but what industry sectors they fall into, and what percentages would fall into those sectors? I mean, there's going to be a number in agriculture, there's going to be a number in hospitality,
Yeah.
so on and so forth. I'm trying to get a sense of whether we're dealing with minimum wage positions on a part-time basis, or whether we're attracting full-time that are paying jobs.
A couple ways to answer that question. First is those 700 jobs that were available and the between 1 and 200 that were filled, that's only dealing with our job fair. And we have no control over which sectors and what proportion are represented. It's whatever employers decide they want to participate in that. So our success there, or at least what sectors are having which kinds of jobs filled, isn't indicative of some broader trend in the county. It may be indicative of the type of sectors that feel our job fair is a good place to find employees. We do know, as I said, we're in the process of calling those different employers. So yes, it's probably fairly easy to say the jobs are part-time or full-time, seasonal or not, and in what sectors those are in. I don't have that information handy right now, though.
Any data from the consultations at the Small Business Center?
I would have.
Looming there?
Yeah, through the chair, I'd have to check with Sandy, the rep. But because that's a provincial program, they may only track certain stats. A lot of time, even I think with the jobs, the 60 jobs mentioned through those business starts, even those aren't tracked through the province. That is information that Sandy keeps separate because she knows we would like to know that, and so she tracks it on her own. So I'm not sure how much deeper the data goes there. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Neil, for the courses that are offered through and I know they're all attended, but how are they selected? Like, do you go to the businesses and ask them which course they need, or how do you select them?
Yeah, so through the chair, each year our office meets with Sandy at the Small Business Center and with the Chamber of Commerce manager, and they brainstorm based on the feedback they've received from the consultations, from the inquiries that they have. So each year we are working with partners to see what are the hot topics right now. Does there seem to be a lot more interest, or have we had a lot of inquiries for the following type of training? That's how they plan out what happens each year. So it is in consultation with the Small Business Center and the Chamber of Commerce. And I believe we also we work with Career Edge on that, and have received funding through Pella in the past. So they periodically have sat at the table as well and provided feedback on what businesses are looking for. Okay? Okay, so continuing on, again, we've kind of gone through the middle section, giving you some metrics on our specific initiatives. And now we're going to look at some of these broad economic indicators. So really this is supposed to give you a lay of the land of the county. We call this, we're taking the pulse of the county essentially. So first thing is population trends, and I know this line is relatively straight, but I think it wasn't under-publicized that our population did go down by a few percent with the last census. An interesting thing, though, is we have access to some more detailed data, so we can actually see what those changes were based on some correlational data with births and deaths and things like that through some of the tools the province gives us. And so we can see what the population was, or an extrapolation of it from year to year. So we had a 2% decline, roughly 2% decline between 2011 and 2014 specifically. But from 2014 to 2016, we've had very little change. So this isn't definitive in any way, but it does give us, it reinforces what we felt, which was that things were starting to stabilize. Anecdotally, things were stabilizing, more families were being seen, the real estate market was heating up, developers were interested in building more homes. So we had hoped to see that. We're anticipating seeing that when we look at the next census. I just thought that was an interesting piece of information for you. This is our current population distribution in red based on the census, and 2011 is in blue. So as you can see, things have shifted. The little spike that we had in the youth age group has risen a bit into the early 20s, and obviously our seniors population has risen, which is not unexpected. These are the exact numbers of decrease that we've had in the first two categories, and then up significantly. So none of this is too surprising to us. I think I'd showed this before last year. This green area is who we are engaging with through Build a New Life and some of our other lead generation campaigns. So just so you have an understanding, we're really targeting the right demographic, the demographic mid-career professionals, young families that we seem to have a gap for in the county. And we're able to determine that with Google metadata and analytics that knows the ages of people when they log in with Google profiles through their browser, and then are picked up on either our websites or our social media or our high-low data sensors. And the other thing is Council and the Commission both funded the ROC, and as I mentioned, our staff is working more closely with the ROC on different programs this year. That is also representative of us trying to address that lack of youth in the county, lower birth rates, and trying to keep youth here. So it just overlays where our target segments are relative to our population for you. Next, we're going to get into some real estate numbers, and I have some updates at the end of this little series just because it took a while to get this presentation in front of you. So we are a few months behind. But overall, as you can see, the real estate market has been very hot in the county for the past year and a half, I'll say. This is showing detached homes sold by month, considerably more in 2017 than the 2014 to 16 average, at least in the first part of the year. Inventory is way down in 2017 in the first part of the year relative to the 2014 to 16 average. We should have overlaid this red over the blue at the front of the graph there, but as you can see, if you look at January to March 17 in the red, is considerably more than January to March in the blue at the front part of the graph. This is the percentage of homes selling for listing price are over. So that has increased dramatically this year. And I thought this is interesting. The price increase of properties in the county, sale prices in the county, really tracks the market in Toronto quite closely. So it gives us a sense of where a lot of that demand is stemming from. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit more with some of the updated data. So there's the average prices that we have, at least at this point in 2017. The interesting thing about this that we've been thinking about, this is one example, Alison Lottie. She sold her property in the city, which allowed her to do two things. One, that was reinvest into a new venture in the county. She is starting a business here with some of those excess proceeds, but also the home she was able to buy here, she doesn't have a mortgage on it. So a lot of times we talk about, all we have in the county is these part-time seasonal jobs. People can't afford to live here. Well, increasingly, the people that are coming, at least in this segment, from the cities cashing out in that significant equity in their property, have the flexibility of starting a business without worry because they don't have that huge cost that most of us would have, which is that mortgage payment. So, and they're reinvesting a lot of that money back into Prince Edward County too. So there is a benefit there on two fronts. Again, won't read this, but this is a little bit of feedback from a local contractor. We spoke with them as a part of our business retention and expansion project, and they really underscored what's happening in the housing market, and what's happening with new people bringing this investment potential from the city into the county. So now I have some updated data. I'll preface this by thanking Councillor Hull, who was able to provide this to us. So a couple things, I'll say generally there's just these four graphs to show you. We've seen a little bit of a downturn that's really closely correlated with the downturn in Toronto. In all likelihood, it's caused by some of the new regulations that have come into place there. So it's yet to be seen if this is a significant correction or if there's going to be a rebound similar to what happened in Vancouver after an initial downturn as well. But at least between May and July, we have seen a little bit lower pace, still very high if you look at historical averages in the county, but lower pace than what was happening earlier in the year. This is showing detached home sales. As you can see, in June and July, the sales are actually down from the 14 to 16 average. Homes are still selling for listing price and over, but a much less percentage than in the previous months. We were extremely high in May and June, and July we are now down, still at a high if you look at historical average, but not nearly as significant as earlier in the year. And then lastly, looking at months of inventory, we've been plagued by very low inventory, which has been one of the reasons that prices have been driven up. Inventory is now coming back up again. It is still, again, below a historical average, but it is much higher than it has been since January of this year. So this is some of the jobs data I mentioned. This is the trend for jobs from 2010 all the way to 2016. So as you can see in 2014, 15, 16, but especially in 15, 16, we certainly had an uptick in the number of jobs in the county. This doesn't give you a lot of the detail though, so if we go to the next graph, this is the breakdown of the size of these businesses. And so where you see the most growth is in self-employed, obviously. And you see a lot of the other industries plateauing. You see some increases and some decreases in different areas with some of the larger employers. But what's really amazing is that we've gone from 2013 to 2016, almost an 800 increase in those reporting as self-employed. So that is substantial. It means that we have a lot more of these footloose professionals. We have entrepreneurs that are starting businesses. We have contractors that are maybe leaving employment of one and starting their own operations. And I think it also kind of lends a bit of credence to this fact that these are the types of businesses and the types of jobs that we really need to be focusing on, because there is the potential for growth there. There's not nearly the potential for growth for traditional industry or manufacturing or something to that extent. So let's just get into some of the building permit trends now, and we're in the home stretch. Yep.
You have a question?
Oh, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The last chart that you showed.
Yep.
Say 20 to 49 employees, it's down in 2016. Do you think that the hourly rate hike to $15 an hour is going to reduce that number? Or have we done any work around that?
No, we haven't. I believe the Ontario Chamber of Commerce has done a study on that, and if I'm not mistaken, we're going to have access to that very shortly. They've done a bit of an impact assessment on what's going to happen across the board, so it will be interesting to see that. I think what's interesting looking at this is when you go from 61 to 48 employers with employees between 20 and 49, that doesn't necessarily mean a decrease, because if you go to the next one, 50 to 99 employees, we've gone from 12 to 19. So This doesn't really tell us which direction things are going, but we are seeing, you could infer that some of those that have moved out of the 20 to 49 have actually grown. And that is in line with what our business retention and expansion research has shown us as well, that a lot of these businesses are trying to grow.
Councilor Member?
The last few slides are not in our package, but they have some really valuable
Yeah.
information on them.
Yeah, they will be circulated, and there's a few more new ones as well. So we'll make sure that the new PowerPoint is circulated to all of the members.
Councilor Canal?
I'll just stay on this one.
Thank you. In our jobs category there, any idea as to how many are full-time versus part-time employees? And second to that, we've had some businesses open up in the county that haven't been involved with economic development at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they would certainly enhance the number, but do we try, when we get a new business, as soon as possible to try to get the input data to build into the overall picture for the county?
Sorry, just refresh my memory on the first question about these numbers.
I just wondered, in these numbers, how many would be
Oh, right.
full-time versus part-time?
Okay, so we don't have that. This comes from payroll reporting, essentially. So if you have an employee on payroll, it shows up as an employee. So we don't necessarily know, at least with these numbers, how many are part-time and full-time. I may be able to pull that through some of our other data sources. And with respect to new businesses that have never connected with us, but that still start up, we don't rely on a direct connection with local businesses to know what our complete employment profile or business profile looks like. We really have to look at some of these other provincial tools to find that out. But we do attempt to reach out to new businesses when we hear about them, or we learn about them through some of the business associations that they become members of, just to connect to see if there's anything that we can assist them with. So next, and again, like I said, we're moving to the end. I'd like to talk about building permit trends, and I think this one is really important because this one has a significant impact on the county's resources and staffing, certainly. Here you're looking at 2016 to 2017 work value of county permits that are coming in, building permits, and these are permits of all types, not just new homes. And as you can see, significantly higher in the first part of the year than from 2016, with the one caveat that we had the Royal Hotel, which I think was a permit of around 9 million that came in February. So that's why there's that one spike there, that anomaly. So here is up-to-date permit values for this year, and I think this is very telling. So as of July 2016, last year, permit values were around 44 million. As of July this year, permit values are up 49% to 66 million. And in terms of total number of permits, 484 at this time last year, 565 this year. And I think what that shows is because you're not seeing the same proportion of the types of permits increasing kind of across the board, because the increase in the number of permits is less than the substantial increase in the value. It means that these permits are being taken out at higher values, which means more new housing builds as opposed to smaller renovations, or more seasonal home builds as opposed to someone putting a deck on their house or something like that. And speaking of new home builds, year to date in all of 2016 was 126. Year to date as of actually today in August is 140. So we've already exceeded the total last year for new homes, where I would anticipate that we could be somewhere, around 180 or even beyond. So that's substantial growth year over year, and you can imagine what the implications of that growth are on the building department and our development services staff, because development services staff are dealing with these subdivisions where a lot of these homes are showing up. And once shovels go in the ground, then the building department is one-on-one with them. So it certainly means that resources are being taxed. This is a bit of a profile of new home builds. As you can see, we had kind of we were fairly steady all the way up until 2008. Then around the recession, things dropped off substantially. And then we've been in a slow recovery since around 2012. But this is what we're looking like right now. And this number of 1,800 new builds at various stages of development, this doesn't mean 1,800 permits have been filed or subdivision applications have come in, although a good chunk of these 1,800 are formal applications that have been submitted or the permits have been taken out. But it also recognizes a lot of the conversations we're having with developers that have lapsed plans of subdivision that are looking to re-engage on those projects, or developers that are coming in that haven't filed yet that are still working through pre-consultation. But there's still a good chance of a lot of this development actually occurring. Of these 1,800, you're looking at around 1,090 detached and 710 attached. So while we can't say any of those are definitely affordable by our affordable definitions, the attached houses tend to be more affordable, tend to be of the townhouse variety, and there are quite a few in the plan, in the pipeline, of those 1,800. So to ask the question, what is the county doing, and it is an anticipation of this, and there's two big things. One is development services and the other one is workforce attraction, because we've said we want this growth and development. We need it. We need it for connections to our water and sewer. We certainly need it to sustain the demand for workforce, and we need it for additional tax revenue so that we can become financially sustainable. And this is really how we're going to approach that, is through development services and through workforce attraction through the commission and the department. So some of the things that are underway: obviously this past year, council approved increased staffing in development services. The development framework was implemented. We are working much more closely on those different development approvals now as well. And there has been improved tracking and customer service for a lot of those projects, which was very important. On the workforce attraction front, there has been increased collaboration with Career Edge and other employers to try and place people and assist in finding out where the best places to bring potential employees from to the county. We're working with the Rural Employment Initiative in the GTA to bring employees here to rural Ontario. There's been an application to the Municipal Immigration Fund, which would again help us cater to immigrants looking for work who may not be aware that there are opportunities in their fields in rural Ontario. And there's a lot more collaboration with Quinte Immigration Services as well. So on the affordable housing front, I won't go through each one, but if there's any questions about them, I can certainly answer them. There's a lot of different things underway. The development framework speaks to affordable housing. The Chamber is doing a vacation rental study, and they're going to be bringing a proposal to the department and the commission very shortly. We have an accommodation needs study that is underway that the commission funded this year. You have asked staff for a report on the sharing economy in the accommodation sector, so that is forthcoming, currently being worked on. We're also planning and have had this discussion with the mayor and education session on affordable housing, similar to when council had an education session on the Heritage Conservation District, because there's a lot of information and nuances to affordable housing that we think is important to know as we move forward to tackle that challenge here. And then we also received a proposal for the Niles Street development in Wellington, the old Wellington Arena, and we're working through that project with those developers. Kind of to close, the 2017 priorities that I said, things were starting to happen, but we didn't really have a lot of information to report on. Certainly when it comes to agriculture, the Commission had played a role in the official plan and has heard information from both the agricultural community and our planning staff on the impact of the LEAR, the economic impact of changes to farmland that could come as a result of the LEAR. And we are currently looking at a partnership with Ontario Farmland Trust to bring the 2018 Farmland Forum to Prince Edward County, and that would be in partnership with the Prince Edward Fed of Ag, our Agriculture Advisory Committee, and the Chamber of Commerce. Around heritage preservation, we are looking at participating with the Heritage Advisory Committee and sponsoring a Heritage as an Economic Driver award as a part of their award program for next year. And the Commission has also established the creation of a walkway animation program, which should help animate downtowns. And then around outreach and communication, the Commission regularly receives deputations from different sectors, different organizations, so that they can stay up to date on the things that are happening in the community within their mandate. They held a business leaders forum and will be holding a follow-up forum this fall. There's been actually some public responses from our chair in the media addressing some really sensitive issues that have been discussed around tourism and around the county's approach to economic and community development, I think, which is really important. And then there's been some really good press as well regarding the Commission and their involvement, again, in visitor services and in partnership with the ROC and others. So just part of the outreach and communication activities. In closing, as I said at the beginning, this was really the first year with robust data collection. That'll continue for the rest of the year. Then we'll be able to establish all of our baselines, and we'll be setting targets for 2018. And we also want to promote more community awareness of this. So in short order, the link that's listed there, the county.ca/KPI for key performance indicators, is going to be active, and most, if not all, of the data and the graphs that you saw in this presentation will be available on the Build a New Life website, and we'll be able to update those in real time as new data comes in and as things change. So we really want to promote the community and your awareness of the metrics around all of our programs. And so that's it. I'm happy to answer any more questions.
Thank you, Neil. I have Councillor Fox, Councillor Roberts, and Councillor Hall on the list of questions. Okay, and Councillor Dunlop. Okay, so go ahead, Councillor Fox.
Just until the end.
Two questions. The first question is on new builds. Is that basically retirees coming into the county?
Through the chair, there's no way to know the demographic profile of who's taking out those permits. It's just the type of permit that's issued. I think if you asked builders and developers, they would have a good anecdotal sense of who is buying those homes. I think that to get a better idea, you need to look at the price point of a lot of those new homes. Are people building those homes for themselves, or is a developer building the home to sell? Is it being sold in advance? And I think a lot of maybe the mid-career professionals or the young families that are coming in, they are looking at purchasing existing homes because I think they would tend to be more within their price range. But you have a couple realtors who might be able to substantiate that around the horseshoe.
My last question is the developmental framework. Are we going to get a separate report on the success or challenges still that we still have to overcome? Because there was a tremendous amount of work put into that, and I personally want to see that work. So I want to see that report.
So through the chair, I think we fully intend to bring back periodic updates and information about how the development framework is playing out. I know that a number of those 32 or 33 action items have already, they're either underway or actually completed. Some of them were related to water, wastewater, and connection charges. Others were related to staffing increases, so some of those things have already happened. I think you'll probably hear more about that in advance of the budget process, because some of those recommendations will have budget implications or could have additional budget implications. And I think between myself and Peter Moyer and the CAO, we'll be discussing how best to bring forward a report on that before budget time.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. To Neil, first of all, thank you for a great presentation. We had a different choreography earlier on with Gil Leclerc, our Vice Chair, but I think you did. We got 3 for the price of 1 through you, so thank you very much. I think in terms of the media and anyone who's watching the streaming, it's important to appreciate that the Community and Economic Development Commission works within a council-approved mandate dating back to May 22nd, 2012. And I think it's worth mentioning the hard work that those commissioners do. Councillor O'Brien is on the commission, Mayor Quaife is there ex officio, Christine Searle, who helped a lot with our key performance indicators, Gilles Leclerc is our chamber representative and now vice chair, Lynn Sullivan, Tim Ward, and Adam Bouchard, of course, have made tremendous contributions, and it's worth noting that for the record and for the archives. I think we're going to be over, Neil, the 1 million free media coverage by Friday. For those who might be interested, I'll be doing a Société Radio-Canada interview in trying to remember my mother's maiden language in French, so we'll be doing that. We'll be over the 1 million mark. And to the question that dealt with the impact of minimum wage implementation off the top, that $15, the Ontario Chamber of Commerce runs a number of about 185,000 Ontario jobs at risk. And our chamber is running a number which I believe is around 315 county jobs at risk. Now there are a number of assumptions in that. First of all being that it's a $15 implementation right away, and that's not necessarily the case. That's it, thanks.
Councillor Hall?
Yes, in all honesty, it's a quick comment, not a question. I'm very quickly going to test this, Chair.
Go for it.
First, I have to put my comments in context that you are blessed with an outstanding product to promote.
Yes.
It's not like this is Armpit, Ontario, or some rundown Milltown.
Okay.
This are natural, cultural, you name it, attributes. This is a killer product. That said, I thought that the presentation was outstanding, and I would give the commission, I'm a tough marker, so I won't give an A+, but I would give it an A. I was especially pleased by the introduction of the measures, which I think will put things, I think the commission has been on a business-like footing, but it will be on an even more substantial business-like footing when we can track both activities and results. So I thought that was an important new development that I was very pleased to see. Finally, a couple of cautions. Heroism only lasts so long, and my impression, it's sort of just impressionistic, is that you're achieving heroic results with the result of heroic effort on the part of staff, and people can burn out. So that would be kind of one caution. Related to that, I would encourage you to be prudent not to take on too much. I know there's an adage, how to get something done, ask a busy person. But the effectiveness and the reputation of the commission depends on meeting its commitments, and there will come a point where there's a straw that breaks the camel's back, and you will start to lose your ability to deliver on time, which is important to everyone. If you take on too much, as you said, the challenges that the county faces, that's a good problem to have. So it's just a mild caution in an otherwise outstanding performance. Thank you.
Councillor Dunlop?
Just on the same vein, I'd like to congratulate you on the presentation, also to pass on to your staff the great work they do. Obviously, the county's certainly changing. I know that contractors, you can get a county contractor, and they'll help you on an app, get somebody on for reviewing siding, et cetera, And in the village of Wellington, I've lived there for 48 years, and I had to wait for traffic, and the traffic is just crazy for the people that have been around there. And I'd like to count the number of new businesses that are there, but I think it's important. It's all positive, but it's created new challenges that could be negative, and I think it's important to keep our finger on the pulse, that make sure we continue going in the same way. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Maynard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A specific question around the affordable housing. I'm glad to hear that we will delve into that more deeply, because I think it's probably my concern. But so now, when you said that the average house price was now at $450,000, does that then change the value of what is considered to be affordable housing unit when we're
talking to developer when we're trying to get affordable housing built, because, I mean, that's, if we're looking at whatever it is, 70% affordable, well, that's still far from what most people would consider to be affordable. So is that number factor?
Yeah, through the chair, to the best of my knowledge, yes, it would be. I mean, as the average increases, I think the calculation that we use is 80% or less of average market rate for sale or for monthly rental. There's still I think there's some gray area in there as well, because, for instance, with average monthly rental, is that with or without utilities? For developments like the Wellings of Picton, where there's other services that are built into the monthly rates, there's still a question of what that looks like. But I think the short answer is yes, as our average prices increase, then whatever that affordability figure is on the rental and purchase front would also increase. That's another reason, I guess, that we need to make sure that we're doing what we can to mitigate the upwards pressure on the housing market that is resulting from there not being enough supply, and some other challenges, because that will help when it comes to the affordability factor.
Just as a quick follow on the jobs and the role of raising the minimum wage. I mean, I work in the service sector. If we have demand that is far outstripping the supply, I don't see in my business or in what's going on in the county that raising the minimum wage will have a whole lot of effect, other than it'll put more money in people's pockets, and they can then grow and enjoy more services. And I'd like to thank you for your update of what the department's up to. It's a commission review, but I think that very little bit, but listening and some important insight into what the department itself and staff is doing.
And through the chair, if I could just comment, we've heard that from a lot of businesses as well, that because of the labor market in the county, they're already paying at 15 or more for jobs that typically wouldn't see that kind of wage. We haven't done the study. The chamber has done a study, and they are making those estimates. I'm sure there's certainly some validity to that, but we've heard from many businesses that the $15 an hour is not a concern for them, simply because they're already paying over and above in order to have staff.
Okay, I have Councillor Pennell and Councillor Roberts, and then I'd like to also ask.
I was just gonna suggest that we've still got a lot of stuff on our agenda, and it was a wonderful report, and perhaps if people had a question afterwards, they could submit them to the commissioner or the director. But if we don't soon move on, we'll be having to call another meeting to replace it.
Well, we are trying to get through the business here, Councillor Carbone. I believe it's important for all of us who want to finish. Do you have another question, Councillor Roberts?
No, I tend to agree with Councillor Maynard. Those numbers are the Ontario Chamber of Commerce and our local Chamber of Commerce. And I think part of the 315 that's being reflected in there by our local chamber is the vulnerability that's being felt by our agricultural community, who are feeling the pressure of commodity prices falling, two very polar opposite growing seasons, etc. So those are not my views. I'm sharing them as the views that are being articulated by the chamber and other advocacy groups.
Thank you. Okay, so I haven't asked anything yet, but I guess some of the data that I'm not sure if we're collecting or if we're continuing to collect, and I looked particularly at those permit numbers and the value of the building associated with those permits, just in a sense in terms of the kinds of housing that's being built and the effect on the year-round rental market from let's say apartments being transformed into condos, or the loss of what's currently year-round rentals for other kinds of housing, and just if the growth in value of permits is growing so much more than the actual number of permits, does that mean that there are more luxury homes, for example, being built that are, I mean, do we have any way of parsing that data more? Because it's going to be really important as we continue the affordability discussion to get a sense of what the actual housing landscape is and what diversity we have right now, and if there are pressures on that diversity.
Through the chair, I think it's a really good question. I think that the biggest upward pressure on the permit value number that you saw, the 49% increase, is that there's so many new home builds are those permit numbers. I don't think it's necessarily because they are luxury homes. In fact, if you looked at some of the development pipeline numbers that I had on that later slide, a significant number, I think it was 35 to 40% were attached homes. So townhomes and things of that nature, which may still be luxury to an extent, but certainly represent a more affordable option than a traditional standalone single-family dwelling. I don't think you can, kind of draw any relationship between the new permits or the new home builds and what's happening with the rental market, other than to say there certainly doesn't seem to be a lot of monthly rentals being built. Those aren't the types of permits that we're seeing. We're not seeing, we had the Life building a few years ago, and I don't know if we've seen anything more than a duplex or triplex or something like that built since then. So currently, there is a shortage. We have seen some conversion of rental units to condo units. Some of that is happening on King Street right now in Picton. But there's also demand for those units as well. And to some extent, some of those condos will even represent affordable dwellings that people are purchasing. So I don't think we can look at any of the data that I've shown here to get a sense of are we only building luxury homes? The only way to really know what the value of those individual permits are is to go through and look at the individual permits and see what that value is. Are they $500,000, $600,000 homes? But I think that simply the number of homes has increased so much. That's probably having the biggest impact on the permit value increase. Otherwise, I couldn't say the nature of those homes.
Just a follow-up as well on the wage issue. I think, as we see affordability being reduced for people with increasing house prices, etc., I think it speaks to the importance of a living wage, which could address issues in terms of people being able to find housing and to work here and live here. And I think as we continue with these discussions, we can't look at affordable housing in a silo as one thing, because it's affordability in general in all sectors, food, again, others, it's just tied to all of those things, which go to families' ability to pay those bills. So looking at affordability in general and ways to tackle that, whether it's through advocating for wages or whatever, I think that should be very much part of the discussion. Okay, we'll end it there. We'll take a vote now to receive. So we'll take a vote now to receive the review. Thank you very much. I have Councillor Gale, Councillor Roberts. Go ahead, Councillor Gale.
Moved by Gale and seconded by Roberts, presentation by the Director of Community Development regarding the Community Economic Development Commission 2017 mid-year review be received.
All those in favor? Should you have a question? Oh, all those in favor? That motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brings us to committee reports. Item 7.